Dear friends, so welcome to the sixth webinar of CineConf powered by IMAX in association with TheatreWorld and Network 208. In today's topic, we shall discuss about the rebuilding and strengthening the cinema exhibition sector during this COVID-19 situation. For today's discussion, we have Mr. Amit Sharma from Miraj Entertainment, Archana Kalpathi from AGS Cinemas, Devang Sampat from Cinépolis, and Rahul Puri from Mukta A2 Cinemas. So Mr. Karan from Elara Capital will be moderating this session. For taking this conversation forward, I would request Mr. Karan to take it over. Over to you, Karan.
Thanks, Raghav. Hi all, good evening, and welcome to this webinar hosted by Network 208, and we're going to talk about the strategies in terms of how cinemas will rebuild in these tough times of COVID. I think it's a very interesting topic. Just to put things into perspective, cinemas have been shut for almost 2 months now. They got shut almost at March 13, 14, pan-India basis. We almost 2 months on the cinemas have been shut. They've been working on zero revenues. These are quite troubled times. I think we're going to here really assess the impact in terms of how do they, move away this tough time, and in terms of reducing their fixed costs. As you know, rental is a major contributor of the entire fixed cost. It's almost about 40 to 50% of the overall fixed cost. So I think that is something which you can discuss in detail. Also, given how things are, the current situation, how the situation unfolds in terms of number of cases, I do not see, as a personal view, I do not see cinemas opening before, mid-June or probably last week of June. And in terms of occupancy coming back to normal levels, I think that may not come, probably until September, October, or probably even later if the situation worsens, and if at all we have a second wave. Now they'll be operating at half the occupancy because of social distancing norms. They will also have to spend a lot in terms of hygiene, sanitization, and that will also involve a lot of expenses. So let's try and find out and what exactly the impact is. We have a very esteemed panel today. We've got people from the production industry and the exhibition industry, and also some large cinema chain operators. So thank you everyone once again for joining, and let me just start with Devang. So, Devang, you are the largest cinema operator here in terms of number of screens. About 400 plus screens is what you have in India. Can you just give me some kind of brief in terms of what exactly is the impact right now, and how would you assess the current situation in brief? And then we can move point by point over to various details.
Sure, Karan. I think you said the context right. So, I mean, almost 60 days with box office being zero. This first time ever happened at Cinépolis in last 50 years journey. So all across our 6,500 screen, currently the box office stands at zero. This is absolutely unheard of and unprecedented. One thing before I start, I want to give again a big shout out to all the police force and the hospital staff that are working day and night tirelessly to serve our country. So a big shout out to them. Looking at the current situation also, I mean, when we are talking about confirmed cases of about 70,000 in India, and this cases, if you look at the trend, is only growing, and we're talking about day by day, even the last week average that we talk about 3,500 cases growing is something that is not a positive sign for the country. Now, what is happening, I mean, is the fact, and we'll have to start accepting, adapting to it. There is no rule book written. We'll have to write our own rules. There is no guideline. We'll have to start learning every day and face the situation as it comes. What we have done is we've analyzed the situation globally. Of course, there is not like a very positive news that is coming from any country, but there are countries where cinemas have started opening up. But just to go back first to assess the situation, we divided our current situation in priorities, and we defined 4 priorities for ourselves. I mean, the first and the foremost priority that we see is how do we protect the business? I mean, let's secure the business first, and then of course in the long term of your balance sheet and P&L, there may be a smaller dent which we are seeing 2020s, but we need to act fast, act on ground, and we need to make sure that we protect our business. And then we are taking measures to how do we protect our business. Second step that we took is, we keep talking. I mean, not only forums like this, but we keep talking to our customer. So when I say customer, it's B2B and B2C both. The consumer who is buying tickets, we're talking to them, we're taking their feedback, and the stakeholder, the biggest stakeholder in our business is our producers, our cinema owners, the mall owners. We're trying to understand from them, giving them update about what is happening to our business, and continuously having a dialogue is helping us, assessing the situation and giving them comfort that we are here and what we are taking is the right measures to see how to handle this situation. Third step, what we are doing is engaging our biggest strength that we have, which is our own people, Cinépolis. With the workforce of almost, with direct and indirect 5,000 people that we have on our payroll, we are doing various activity, giving them right guidance, communicating them with them, engaging with them on a structured engagement plan. So the engagement with our internal customer again is when I say internal customer is our employees and other tasks. And the fourth and the most important priority is how do we reopen? I think today's specific session we are talking about how do we reopen? We are talking to look, I mean, the overall, when you look at big picture, yeah, the situation is not good. Whether world over cases, India cases is not good. But we'll have to now look at even dividing India into certain states. Each state has their own challenges. We have seen and heard how Kerala has come back strongly, is ramping up to see how different part of the businesses can be reopened. Likewise, we are seeing we'll have to look at this state-wise. Within Cinépolis globally, we have just reopened, couple of territories. Costa Rica, US have given permission in certain states. We'll be engaging with the local authority to see what can we do. One of the learning that we had when before this, the entire lockdown happened, one of the country that we are operating, Spain, where we operated with the new norms, which we are going to roll out just before the lockdown happened. So, which means we operated with 50% capacity, sanitizing auditorium, working with the government actively to guide what can we do to continue running the business, but keeping safety as our prima facie important. So, meaning safety of our customer and safety of our internal employee are the most important part of our business, and we need to make sure that we take all the measures. Keeping all this learning, we are actively working with the government. You did made an assessment and you did made an opening statement of you do see that cinema may not open before June. I mean, there are certain states I see that it may not open even beyond that. And considering that, we'll have to look at state, we'll have to look at each state as it comes. And then I see there are certain states may open within May itself, and then it may come back soon. What we are calling it as a ramp-up period. A ramp-up period can be between 4 to 6 weeks, depending on state, depending on what measures and what actions that, and as an exhibitor, we can take to provide a safe environment to our customer. We will continue to take those measures, and we have built a very elaborated plan on what can be done to make sure that we give a safe environment and we come back to business. Mm.
I think if we can also steer this conversation to Archana and Amit, predominantly they've had a lot of screens in the southern part of India. As you know, South is a big market as such. It's almost 25% of the overall box office as a ballpark number. And people are really crazy there, when it comes to going for movies. We've got the highest occupancy registered in the southern states. And given the current scheme of things, I think the number of cases are slightly more limited as compared to the north and west in Maharashtra and Delhi. So I'm guessing, the south market will be the first one basically to open up. And given how people are in terms of fanatics over there, Archana and Amit, can you both share your perspective in terms of how do you guys plan to bring people back to cinemas and how will you all, observe social distancing when the occupancies are really high over there, those kind of markets?
Thanks, Karan. I think, first of all, the situation in Tamil Nadu is not looking great as well because cases are going up. So I don't see us opening at least this month. The main reason for occupancies to be very high is cinema is very affordable here. And irrespective of the situation that we've all been forced into, I think it's important that we keep it affordable. I mean, that's something which is very, very important for us. So we are right now focusing on how to keep the experience at the same cost, if not at a lower price, at the same time ensure safety, and not pass on the extra costs that are going to that will happen when we have to do the 50% occupancy and sanitization. And overall, I think the sentiment will be positive because people do love cinema here, and Tamil has a very strong local content. We have a lot of wonderful filmmakers and wonderful content that has lined up. So definitely, I'm quite optimistic when it comes to people actually coming back to cinemas. But definitely we are working internally on a lot of messaging within our employees because first and foremost, we need to protect our team and ensure that they are comfortable to come back into the workspace. So right now we are at total lockdown here, so our employees have not yet come back to work. So we are focusing on getting the properties cleaned, sanitized, and putting systems in place for temperature checks and making sure that our team is extremely comfortable to come back to work. And then I think we will invest in a lot of training to ensure that they do not endanger themselves because they will be interacting with the general public, and also consciously reduce the amount of touch points that were there before. So definitely the cinema going experience is going to change. And right now our focus is to see how we can make the change without making it expensive. That's been our approach.
So, Karan, just to add to what Archana spoke about, opening the southern market, I think you are right that probably the southern market will bounce back earlier than the rest of the country because we need to understand Tamil Nadu works with Tamil content, the Andhra and Telangana works with more other Telugu content. See what happens is the Bollywood, which is basically the Hindi film industry. They will probably look at Mumbai, Gujarat, and Delhi to come on their feet before they start releasing the films. So probably that will really not be very, very encouraging to start cinemas in other part of the country without having the content in your hand. But at the same time, probably if you have Andhra and Telangana is came back to their feet, they probably will be taking that risk of opening films there and releasing films there because they also do not rely much on the global box office as well. But when it comes to your Hindi film industry specifically, they also need to look at the territories which is out of India. So the content will be the major challenge in rest of the country. So definitely the southern part of the country will definitely bounce back first. I mean, we'll always have it is just not about the occupancy, which is great down south, but at the same time, whenever you will start with the lower capacity, what you have right now, you will always have an issue of handling those people. So definitely this is going to be a kind of thing. But yeah, but in southern market, I personally look that probably we will spread out those people in a weeks, in the whole week because in northern territory it is actually it's very weekend heavy and weekdays lack kind of period, but that's a kind of movie watching habit is there. But in southern market probably will be able to spread it out to the whole week and probably will be able to manage the people in those part.
Also, in these uncertain times, what's been the good news is that, most of the centers have also turned into green zones. Most of these small tier 2, tier 3 cities are not reporting a huge spike in terms of cases. So I think, Rahul, if you can just add some perspective, Mukta obviously is a pan-India player, but they've got a niche focus into smaller tier 2 and tier 3 markets. Have you all done any internal assessment in terms of if at all the green zones are allowed to open cinemas? Probably the earliest, what would be the impact in terms of your company and how well are you prepared for the same?
Well, at the moment, we've done whatever planning we need to do. But I think I'll go back to what Amit was saying. The issue is going to be content. Even though that the green zones may allow cinemas to open up quicker than other parts of the country. But where is the content going to come from? And therefore, what is your occupancy going to be? Does it, and we all know that in those areas, those markets tend to be particularly hinge on things like content. And if there isn't good, strong content available to them, are people really going to come back flooding into the cinemas? Already when you've got 50% occupancy through social distancing and stuff like that. So I think, even though you will see a situation where, in the green zones, some theaters will be allowed to open. I think you will also see the situation where companies like ours, will need to do an analysis whether it actually makes sense to open the cinemas, given the fact that there is no content. Because once you open the cinema, and given the fact that you will rationalize your costs to be able to deal with the fact that you've only got 50% occupancy, etc., all of those kinds of things. I mean, there was somewhere that I read that they may look at starting night shows first or something like that. But given that your fixed cost meters are ticking, and if you are not going to get the occupancy that a good piece of content will drive, then you do have to do an analysis whether it makes sense to open it or not. I mean, the Hindi industry, the North, the Hindi industry, the Hindi belt, they are going to have that issue, that, unless good quality content comes along, people aren't going to come rushing back to the theaters, even if they're open. And, it's a chicken and egg situation because, if you've got a big film, you're not going to want to come back and release that film until, there's a significant occupancy in the theaters and you're confident that there'll be good occupancy. And the reverse is also true where, unless you have good quality content, people are not going to come back to the theaters. So, it's a bit of a vicious circle that we will find ourselves in. And if you do open your theaters in those areas, as Archana has said and Amit has said, in terms of readiness, you will have to be ready in circumstances, but you're also going to have to be very clear and very clever about the kind of programming that you're going to do, because in the short term, it might be quite hard to find good content.
So is there a way to say that even the cinemas in the green zone centers will probably wait for more cinemas to open and probably some content kicks in? Or can you all go for some kind of catalog content as a strategy, what China's adopted?
I think, Karan, that will be done on a property to property basis. You'll have to have a look at, whether there's a demand for such content. And, as I said, it's all going to boil down to the fact of, is it worth it? I mean, is it worth opening the theaters? You have to realize that, you'll be bringing your staff back, even how much ever you do in terms of training and stuff like that. There is always going to be a human element to this. So, you'll have to do it on a property to property basis to see whether it's worth it. China have got catalog content that they can look at. From my understanding, it hasn't all been fantastic. It's not like people are flooding back to the cinemas there. And I'm sure that, in India also, if we do run catalog content, there will be certain pieces of content that people will come back for. But, I'm not sure that it will happen quickly. People will need to be confident enough to say, yes, this trip to the theater to watch a film that I've already seen is worth it, is worth my while, before they start coming back.
Right. So my guess is I think there's still some uncertainty in terms of how the audience comes back into cinema, be it north, south, and the green zone centers. Now, the next strategy which we are going to focus upon here is about the cost part, especially the fixed cost. I think the largest contributor is their rent. So if you look at numbers, almost 40-50% of the fixed costs are rental part. Which have been going on in the market. Large operators have indicated that some of the mall developers have gone for force majeure, some haven't gone for force majeure. A lot of uncertainty around that in terms of what is happening. Also, even if the cinemas were to open up, I think it's going to be challenging for them to pay this kind of a fixed rent right now as they would during pre-COVID times, because the occupancies, because of social distancing, will come down by almost 50% at least, and even below that based on the fear factor of the audience. So Devang, can you also add some insights here in terms of what are the conversations your company has been having with the mall developers, and what's the response to that? And is the fixed major thing finally solved right now? And are they foregoing the fix? Are they foregoing the lockdown rent for all the operators right now?
Then as I mentioned in the previous topic discussion, that having an active conversation can always lead to some resolution. We have been talking to our developers, as they call it. We'll have to live with new normal. There is nothing called a fixed agreement which has happened, and we'll have to continue with that. I believe whomever we have been talking to, a lot of developers are forthcoming and understanding the pain that we are going through. We need to understand their pain also. It is a situation where it is not going to become win-win for anybody. It's going to be a loss sharing, a lose-lose situation. But we need to make sure that we share that loss equally and not put burden only on one party. Yes, whether how much rental we'll pay, what we will do, can that be an initial revenue sharing? Rahul, Amit, and Archana did mention about content is going to remain key to secure when we start releasing or opening up cinema. We strongly believe that as and when we get an opportunity, we should start opening up cinemas. We should actively engage in communication with our producers. I believe that once more than 50-60% of the states open up, even the small Bollywood content, which are not that big budget, will start to uh, their release their content, who are then worried about getting the dates which they may not get in future with all the blockbuster piled up and ready to go on the floor. So what I see is that all the precaution all the precaution that multiplexes needs to take, they are taking. We will assure that the right safety is given. Uh, we will have to get actively engaged with talking to uh, the producer or the distributor. Initially, there may not be, hence we call it ramp up period of 4 to 6 weeks, where one state to all the other states will start rolling in. And of course, the mall developer will have to play a key role for us to actively go and engage with government for opening our cinemas, where they come in as a revenue sharing partner instead of having just fixed rental across the board. So I believe it's going to continue as an challenge which we'll have to face together. And it is not a solution is not going to come like today. It's going to come over a period, and it is going to go through a certain process. That process may take about 12 to 14 weeks, but we are already in active engagement with all three stakeholders, right from our government to producer and distributor, and also to our mall owners.
Do you also see a situation here, wherein a lot of the properties which were probably making big amount of losses and probably may not see any kind of respite in terms of occupancy, can the larger operators go for a temporary pause, shutdown of these properties, something of that sort? Is that also there on the minds of your guys internally?
I'm not sure about. We currently do not have any such property which is, bleeding when the revenues are in the normal stream. So we don't have, as a company, we want to strongly believe in our values. At Cinepolis, we will not be going and to a developer to become an opportunist to wipe off some sin of the past. We will stick to our core values. If it is not making profit before, of course, it will not make profit now also. So there are certain in all the chains there will be some properties which are uh, locked with certain fixed commitment. But if that be so in a normal situation, one has to absorb their own losses. I believe that you have to respect the agreement that you've signed. Going forward, till the time situation becomes normal, those exception rules should only be applicable to those properties.
Got it. So I think apart from rental, rental is the major fixed cost, which is a hurdle, for the profitability factor. I think there are two other big factors, which drive the profitability. One is advertising. That, of course, will be very weak for the entire year because occupancies will come down, ad spend, advertisers have cut budgets across the board on all mediums of media, be it TV, be it print, be it
Yeah.
wherever. But the second most important factor here is the F&B part. I just like to, steer this question to Amit. On the F&B part, I predominantly, have this view that how will you all actually measure in terms of, the safety of the food that is being served? Uh, so popcorn obviously is made in front of the customer, but there's also food which may be probably outsourced in the likes of samosa and may not be cooked in front of every customer. So how will you actually ensure that people try to consume that food in terms of gaining the consumer confidence and people actually consuming this kind of food basically? What are the kind of hygiene measures on the food part which you all have taken?
So I'll be very honest with you. The most challenging part in the entire operation metrics of cinema, what I see is gonna be the F&B service. I mean, if you'll ask me, like just showing up film to somebody with a security check, having the sanitizers on every checkpoint to sanitizing the auditorium and washrooms, it's easier, part to do. And you can just have the 50% of the capacity being sold with the uh, uh, social distancing, and this is an easier part. But when it comes to serving F&B to this customer is gonna be a complete new game. And I think we have to actually unlearn everything what we have learned so far in our industry, and we have to reboot the entire system, and we have to rethink the entire strategy for operations. I mean, specifically when it comes to F&B, I mean the way we are planning. I mean, if you look at probably the QSR model of our F&B will now shift to a supermarket of F&B. I mean, we are planning to have a lot of vending machines. So the vending machine will just not vend out your PET bottles and your packed food, but at the same time, probably will come out with the packed popcorns also and packed samosas also, which vend out for the customers. Uh, in the concession, maybe you look at to have a supermarket kind of structure where you have all this product, mise en place already done. You have all your product lying over there. The customer comes, he picks up the product and he goes to the concession counter only for doing the billing. We are going with a lot of technology enhancement also. You'll have QR code behind every seat so that you can just scan the QR code and you can place your orders in F&B, and with the option of either you go and pick up your food or we deliver that inside. And definitely when it comes to preparing food, I'll tell you, I mean, so these are the days of the past when you used to go to a bakery and buy product like samosas to sandwiches and etc., and then used to trade out. So today is a time when all multiplexes almost operate their own kitchen, and we operate our kitchen with with a very very global standard of hygiene and sanitization. So I mean, this was there previously also. Probably because of this COVID situation, now it will go to a one step ahead from here. So, I mean, definitely the kind of food what we will make. So the samosa which you're talking about is all frozen samosas comes today, and you just heat it and you serve it. So all that thing which has been prepared right now in cinemas will be having a one step higher hygiene level attached to it. And definitely we are trying to look at those options, how we can have the contactless delivery happening either on seat, either in concession. If somebody comes and pick up its own food, vending machines, this QR code option which I spoke about. So there's going to be a lot of new game, and probably we have to change the game rather than actually just changing the rule of the game. So there's the whole new things which will come up, and will probably a lot of these things, a lot of this learning will remain with even the post-COVID situation. And trust me, the way I visualize it, probably it will help us to grow much faster, and that will be definitely much more operation friendly, more convenient to the patrons over a period of time. And also it will be a very cost saving kind of measures for the cinema exhibitors as well.
Got it. So hoping that some kind of confidence does come back towards the consumer on that, and people do start consuming F&B as they would, given the safety precaution measure which you're taking right now. One more important part, in this entire restructuring and in the entire strategy part, given the tough times for cinema, is the content part. We've been hearing a lot of stuff in terms of how the shooting will start. Shooting involves large site sets, a lot of people, social gatherings, and the government is going to go through social distancing for almost, I think, 4 to 6 months now, in terms of not having a gathering of more than 40 to 50 odd people. And usually the large sets for the larger films involve almost 150, 200 people on the set, if I'm not mistaken. So luckily, we've got Rahul from Mukta, who's into movie production, and we've also got Archana, whose company is also into movie production. So can you both, highlight in terms of Hindi and regional respectively, in terms of how the shooting will start and what kind of precautionary measures are being taken over there? Also, as an innovative step, do you think VFX, can be adopted here in a very big way to offset the large kind of social gatherings, and is it good in terms of quality? I mean, will there be a compromise in quality if VFX is adopted?
Okay. So talking from a Hindi point of view, I think that once production is allowed to start up again, at least here the Film Producers Guild has drawn up a series of measures that all producers will need to undertake to ensure that shooting follows the norms that that the government has mentioned, including sanitation, social distancing, things like that. Obviously, I think that in any situation like this, there's going to be a relook at the number of people that you have on set, the kind of capacity of manpower that you're going to use, et cetera, et cetera. Let's face it. I mean, I don't think I'd be unfair in saying that we do have an awful lot of extra bodies on our film sets a lot of the time. So I think that will have to be looked at. Obviously, you'll have to work around conversations with actors and stars. Some of the biggest entourages on sets tend to be theirs, and you'll have to work with them to reduce some of that in some way, shape, or form. But the reality is that production in India is labor intensive. It certainly is labor intensive, where you do have light men and light boys and spot boys and carpenters and electricians and all of these people on set. Now, again, the social distancing norms, sanitization norms can be taken into place. But if you have an intimate scene that you need to shoot, your social distancing norms are going to go a little bit for. You're gonna have a little bit of a problem with social distancing there. I mean, that's the requirement of the script. Now, your question on VFX, it would be possible to do some of those things in VFX, but again, I think you have to consider what film you're trying to make, what background you need to make, how realistic you want to look, and let's face it, VFX is pretty good these days if you're willing to pay for it. It can be very, very good these days, and obviously green screen and sort of stuff like that is some of the sort of most standard things that people are doing. So I mean, it is possible, but the reality is that filmmaking is something that people have a strong vision for, an artistic vision for, and like with everything else, it's not just production, it's not just exhibition, it's going to be all facets of not just business but life after a situation like this. only good, open, transparent conversation between all the participants is going to get you to arrive at some kind of a logical solution. Other than that, I think that we'll just have to see how it goes, because you know I think that we have to realize, we have to understand that film sets can be very tight, they can be very small, they can be very closed, and you are going to need a minimum number of people on those sets for somebody to come in and say, well, not more than 10 people or not more than 20 people. That might not be possible in a certain sense. So we'll have to see.
We've produced a wide range of films, right from your small movies to big movies. It is difficult to control the number of people on the set, because cinema is art at the end of the day, and if you start micromanaging things like that, they will not be able to produce the quality of content that they want, and you really can't get into, because the number of people is actually decided by the director. So the minute you start stepping into that boundary, we can't take responsibility for the output that comes out. So that is a real challenge. But I do feel that this is a great opportunity for us as producers, because pre-production is something that is severely lacking in Indian cinema, because a lot of it is sporadic. People go there and decide what they want to do. Short breakdowns are not done usually. But I think Corona this time would have given a lot of people who are actually in the midst of shooting their films a lot of time to plan their shoot, because I don't see social distancing. It cannot be followed in a film set, because people cannot wear masks in front of a camera. So it just goes out of the window right there. And as Rahul rightly pointed out, a lot of these spaces are quite small or can be quite crowded. So it will be very, very difficult to follow social distancing norms. So we'll have to rethink the entire process. And the second thing is also the safety of the cast and crew, which needs to be completely planned and micromanaged from a production or from a producer's side, because even if one person is infected, and the entire crew will get infected, which means you cannot shoot for 28 days. And time is money in production. Every day that we lose, we actually lose money over there as well. So it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of effort. And I think we also have to reinvent the wheel to start making films and making movies after this is over. But I think we will learn a lot, and we will learn a lot about saving costs, because it's going to be tighter budgets, because the theatrical revenues are going to take a hit in the near future, which means you will not be able to make extravagant choices. So those things are going to also come into play.
So I think one more very important point to stress here, is the release of movies into OTT and satellite. So as per current where the things stand, I think the windowing period is almost 6 to 8 weeks for a film releasing into cinemas and then moving on to satellite and digital. Devang, if I can just move this question to you in terms of what is your assessment in terms of global releases going directly on digital? We've seen Disney announce some of those films, and even AMC is trying to, shy away from the producers in terms of, showcasing their movies after the cinemas open. Where do you see things stand, given this, OTT threat which you're seeing right now of movies going directly into digital? Do you also see the larger films, succumbing to this pressure and probably releasing directly on digital, even if the economics were not to support in a forcible move?
Look, the way I see it is we have been actively, monitoring the situation and how and what is happening. When a producer is making a film, the cost of production is plotted basis, uh, you know, keeping all revenue streams in mind. Yes, Hollywood is one part, but let's talk about Bollywood first. Before we comment that, there are about 20 Indian movies is what we saw, which are almost ready and has an option to go to OTT directly. So what we are contemplating, just to put things in perspective, is out of say uh, more than 1,000 films which may release at multiplexes. We are talking about those 20 films now. Out of those 20 films also, uh, we've heard from the bigger producer like Karan Johar. If you heard him commenting last during this week, saying that it is impossible for a bigger films to recover their costs without having released their movies on a big screen or to have seen without having seen the theatrical window. I mean, mathematically, it doesn't make sense at all. It's a lose-lose situation again if some producer decides to. There are films which are ready like 5 years back who probably chose to go anyway. They were to go to OTT directly. They were meant to be released on OTT platform, and that those are the movies which are going. The way I see it is, movie going is an experience. Uh, Movie going audience. I mean, if we are talking about the biggest movie like Bahubali, is being viewed only by say 10% of India population, and those, if we are only talking about those audience, they will continue and they would want to go to cinema. They're a social animal, all of us. We want to socialize, we want to go out. It is going to remain and continue to remain the way it is. We were the first one to close, we were the last one to open, but the cinema will be the first one to go back to normal. When I talk about ramp up period for any other retailer or any other business, may take up to like 6 to 8 months or probably a year. But cinema, the moment we see, the movies are back in business, we will be the first one to jump up and we'll be the first one to go back to normal, a new normal, which is probably a better than the previous normal. That's what I see about cinema. And talking about OTT again, specific, as I've told you, we are talking about those 20 films. Again, we are actively engaged with them. They, with their own wish, they would never want to. Those producers are quite vocal with us within the exhibition community that they don't want to. In fact, if they release it, they will lose. They will again lose hell lot of money. But it will come down to sustainability of the cost of capital that they may have to pay, and no other OTT platform can pay off for a quality production which can recover the money that an exhibition sector can give. Just to put again things in perspective, about 65% of the collection for an average film comes through exhibition, and I don't think any movies can let that revenue go. And again, we are talking about theatrical bigger producer are waiting not only for things to get normal in India, but also to get normal globally. Because I mean, movie like Suryavanshi, if the collection is 100, 50 comes from overseas, and that overseas market, especially US, UK, and Dubai market, till the time they don't go back to normal, they may not even release in India. So they are talking about forget about completely overruling the exhibition, but even partially overruling exhibition, which is foregoing the international market, may not be an option for bigger product. So we have gained confidence while talking to them. It doesn't make sense economically, and also they have assured, a lot of the producers have assured exhibition community that we have to work together, and they will be with us for this tough time to pass by. So that's what I say about OTT.
Just to play a devil's advocate here, I was just trying to assess a situation wherein probably you see a film releasing probably in the month of September, which is a medium budget movie, or probably in October, November during Diwali time. And you mentioned about these 20 films which are ready and which probably might are in talks with OTT or something of that sort. But if the collections were not to happen, in line with expectations because of social distancing, because of fear factor of the people, and I think we are still about almost 18 months away until we find a proper vaccination for this, and until the fear factor goes away completely. So if at all a movie reports a very dismal collections, probably 30-40% versus the expectation what they used to. Amit, can you also comment on this? Do you see a scope wherein more small medium budget movies might want to consider digital option? if the collections were not to be great in terms of numbers, even after the cinemas open up? And can that be a big threat in terms of, shortfall of content for the exhibitors?
So, I mean, apparently we also produce films, maybe like, once in 3 years of time or so. I mean, see, we all understand when it comes to a small budget film, there are two kind of aspect. And pre-COVID situation, we had this issue that small budget film always spoke about we don't get cinema halls, we don't get number of shows, we don't get theaters. I mean, today we are ready. I mean, if so probably this becomes actually a kind of empty ground for them to run. So this is what the situation they have in their hand. I mean, they've really wanted to like explore the opportunity of like having the movies being played at cinema at a wide screen. Then definitely this is the best opportunity for them. Coming back to the point from the number perspective, anybody in OTT will not pay you more than a 10 to 20% maximum to the cost what you made for. See, cinema exhibition is the only space or the medium which gives you the per eyeball cost, which is the maximum in any other medium. I mean, anybody who's making a product definitely has a medium of like cinema exhibition to OTT, satellite, and other aspect. But at the same time, when you look at the per eyeball cost, what cinema gives you, the per eyeball money what cinema gives you, no other platform gives you. So it is definitely the ball is in the producer's court to decide whether they want to have that risk and reward game, yes or no. I mean, if you look at, I mean, any small films which we talk about, like become the whether it is Uri, whether it is Kabir Singh kind of film. I mean, no one expected them to go like to do a business which is 250 crore plus. It is because of the cinema exhibition these guys have like gone and done a business of 250 crore plus. If they would have gone directly to an OTT, maybe an OTT must have not even given them more than 50 crore bucks. So it is actually a kind of opportunity loss for those guys. So all the seasoned producers and distributors, they understand the value of exhibition. And mind it, I mean, I'm just, we are currently right now only talking about an Indian box office and the Indian number. But I would also want to thank OTT for this. Today, this OTT has taken this Indian content to global also. I mean, why can't we look at an opportunity as a content maker also when you look at, you are actually opening the field for the globe. Predominantly for Indian movies, the market was the places where Indian diaspora were residing, which is your Middle East, which is your UK, which is your North America. But today, if your content has been consumed by Latin America, you have a new window opening, you have a new box office opening. You look at all that film which has released in China, it has a different kind of ROI altogether. So I look at it as a different kind of opportunity where probably the content maker will rely more on exhibition industry, just not the Indian exhibition industry, but global exhibition industry. OTT is taking them all the places across the globe. And probably this becomes a very, very big opportunity for them. And it's about increasing the whole pie. It is just not about taking the cut out of the pie. It is actually increasing the whole pie. And this is a kind of opportunity which lies with Indian storytellers. So this is a very, very big opportunity for them as well.
So Archana, just coming to you on this release of Pon Mangal Vandal, I think that's one of the regional films which has been confirmed for OTT release, and a lot of the Tamil Nadu producers have supported this move. Now, if you see, regional industry is kind of more fragmented, with a lot of the small producers who may not, have this kind of holding power for a good 6 months, 8 months until the cinemas ramp up to normal occupancy. Do you see more producers going for this kind of move directly to digital on a temporary basis? And what is your assessment of the same?
Yeah, I don't think they've yet announced that they're going to come. That's still, I think, people are discussing whether they're going to come or not. Or see, definitely there will be conversations, but in my experience, about 70% of a movie's revenue comes out of theatrical. It is very, very difficult for them to recover the cost of a movie. First of all, for a producer to recover cost for a movie itself, even after theatrical, is very difficult. The movie has to be a super hit for them to recover the cost of production. I think it's a myth when people say that a movie you make 2 times how much money you've put in or 3 times. It doesn't work that way. And the OTT cost or the offers that you typically get are based on your theatrical revenue that the movie has done, unless it's a big star film. Jyotika's film is an exception because it is backed by a star. We don't know whether they are going to take the call, and if they do, it's going to be an interesting time for Tamil cinema because you will see a huge divide between producers and exhibitors on that particular moment, because it is not a small film backed by a small production house. It's actually a medium film backed by a big production house. So it's a very different situation. But you will see, because producers need relief, there are a lot of people who can't survive the 6-month wait. But they will not be able to recover because OTTs also will not back movies that are not done by stars. It's going to be very, very interesting.
Got it. So I think we can just quickly just wrap up here. I just need one comment from all you panelists in terms of, obviously how will the cinemas revive? And just one important thing which you can highlight, each of y'all, in terms of what is the most important factor that, needs to be monitored for cinemas to revive, or probably needs to be done on a very SOS basis. So let me just start with Devang in terms of highlighting that one factor which is most important for cinemas.
Safety. That's it. We need to make sure that we give the right atmosphere, right environment for people who are visiting us, and also for people who are working for us. So safety is a prima facie requirement, and if that is given, I think rest as an exhibitor, that's what we can contribute to. Rest, our friends in Bollywood and Hollywood will keep supplying us content. We'll start exhibiting it, and I think we see coming back to business as normal. I would put safety.
I mean, what Devang has really put across, like safety is the right word. But apart from that, if I just look at from a business angle, then probably I'll put forward, we need to go and reboot our entire system. We have to unlearn what we have learned so far in this industry, and we have to adopt completely whole new strategy in terms of real estate acquisition to operations to F&B and everything. And it is just not for the COVID situation, but at the same time, probably, when you sit down without having this cinema operations running, then you actually go introspect a lot, and you try to understand what you were doing right, what you were doing wrong. And probably this is a time to optimization is going to be the right word for me is going to be the optimization in every aspect, in terms of revenue, in terms of expenses, man hour, to wastages, to everything. So optimization of each and every balance sheet item and the business is going to be the most key factor, definitely apart from safety, which is the most primary point which Devang has already put across.
So yeah, I was going to say that obviously Devang's talked about safety. I just heard the last bit of what Amit said was cost and looking at costs, and I think those are two really important points. And I just like to sort of add to that we really need to focus on our customer. I mean, we need to focus on our patron. We need to ask them what is important to them, what's going to bring them back. I mean, we've spent half of this talking about what's going to bring them back to the theaters, and half of this talking about theaters versus OTT and stuff like that. And I think that in any seismic change, in any large change event, it's important that we don't look back at perhaps what we thought was right. We need to test those assumptions again. And I think some of the most important person to speak to test those assumptions are our patrons, are our audience. Go and speak to them. What kind of content do they want to watch? What kind of facilities do they need? What's going to make them happy coming back to the theaters? Those kinds of things. I think if we show that we're listening, I think that will help build the confidence that they have in us as operators.
No, I think optimism is very important, and I think a sense of positivity needs to be there, not only for our team members, but for the industry and for the public at large. And I think the joy of watching a cinema in a theater needs to be brought back. and the cinema going experience needs to, come back again. And I think the focus needs to be on that, at least, to bring the joy of the magic of the movies back.
Ashish Shah is asking, hello, Mr. Devang, do you see change in habits? Habits in the sense of movie viewing habits will impact the occupancy of cinemas. As of now, OTT is the product which is watched at maximum level. Also, do you see ticket and F&B rates will be sold at discounted rates in 2020?
I believe, yes, initially till the time we go back to normal business, you will see discounted ticket price and so as F&B pricing. It is going to remain like an introduction and coming back to business. We'll have to do all possible push to make sure that people, get back to movie going habit. Whether the movie going habit will continue or not, yes, I mean, as I've told you, there will be fear psychosis initially. I mean, those fear psychosis is going to continue for the ramp up period that we have. We are going to live normal life, like how, for going to office, we used to, I mean, we wear tie and go office and have different costume to go. The mask is going to become like a new dress code. We'll have to accept and we'll have to adapt to that new norms. We will not let go. We cannot live life like this for a longer time. We have taken measures of what are the extremes measures that was required to fight against this corona. We are learning every day, but I believe as human, as I mentioned, we are social. We would like to go back to a normal life and start leading those normal life with movies being part of it. So I think we are ready to start, serving our guests. We want to go back to what we do the best is, showcasing and entertain people with movie exhibition. I think people will come back as well.
So you mean to say we can go like sell Spider-Man and Superman mask also from the theater merchandising now?
Yeah, absolutely. Even Miraj mask.
Miraj mask.
Yes, some new idea for merchandising now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, we'll again take up one more the Q&A question. Mr. Mangesh is asking, can this happen in India? That is, South Korea sees promising increase in movie attendance despite earlier box office drop. So I don't know how true is this news, but can somebody take up this answer? Amit?
I think it's highly possible and absolutely they will come back. There's no doubt. I think everyone's missing it, like engaging socially, and they're all social beings at the end of the day. So everyone will come back. We just need to make sure it's safe and the experience is worth it.
I mean, increase in the box office than earlier.
The reality is we'll have to look at from a macro level. The first thing is, the very short period when you look at, the first thing definitely which is going to fill is a restaurant and bar once you open this new normal, because people wants to just catch up with the friends and the colleagues and everybody. But second thing definitely is going to be cinema, because if I talk about my personal this thing, I do not have any other content to watch in any other OTT now. So probably we have consumed the 4 years of content in 2 months of time, and then another couple of months to go to have the cinemas opening. If it is still 2 months away for full-fledged cinema opening, probably will not have any else things to watch. I mean, if you look at, probably the highest TRPs have gone for Mahabharata and Ramayana also. So you can actually understand how desperate people to go watch content outside. So it is just a matter of time. What Devang said, probably we're gonna have V-shaped recovery coming in, and that's gonna be very, very sure. No doubt about it.
Okay, the next question is from Mr. Gautam Kumar. He says, how the expansion of companies going to impact post-COVID? Is the rental going to come down post-COVID for the new cinemas? Rahul, we can take this.
I think Devang spoke about this at length at the start. Obviously, this is a situation that would require a lot of conversation between multiplex operators and property owners or mall owners. They'll have their own issues. We have our own issues, being hamstrung as we are in terms of occupancy and other things. Yes, it might lead to a situation where more and more leases move to some kind of revenue share. From that point of view, I think that obviously, given the situation, we would look at some reduction of rent, or we would be asking for it. We have to understand that there's somebody on the other side who's got his own commitments, got his own issues to deal with. But I think for the industry as a whole, these conversations will happen, and maybe some good will come out of it.
Fine. I think we answered almost
Raghav,
all
just to add one point to that, what I believe is an expansion or the way we are running the business, the new norm is going to become like pay on performance instead of whatever we are paying at a fixed cost everywhere. I mean, as an exhibitor currently, right from securing the land for expansion to running and paying electricity, which is fixed high commitment for electricity wage, to giving even manpower. I mean, unlike West, here in India, the salaries in cities are fixed and minimum wages are defined. Those norms are the one which are going to be reviewed and relooked at, and probably instead of looking at only the fixed costs, the new norms may come in with pay per performance, or convert maximum of those costs into variable costs. That's where a successful expansion can work upon.
Fine. I think we have covered almost all the Q&A things in the session itself. So let us. The time also is up. Okay. Hope we had addressed all the required queries. And thank you all for joining us. And thank you, Karan, for moderating this session. Special thanks to all our participants. We had a very good turnout today. Keep visiting www.cineconf.com for more details about our next webinars, or this webinars. This also will be available on our website, might be tomorrow. This CineConf webinar has been powered by IMAX in association with TheatreWorld and Network 208. Thank you all again.